Welcome, Christine Anderson from the AFD, actually maybe the new Iron Lady of Europe. Very happy to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
You have raised concerns on many issues, the Green Deal, migration, lack of democracy in the European institutions. What do you think is the main topic, is the biggest problem we're facing right now?
Well, the biggest problem we're facing is pretty much what they're trying to get at, and that is indeed to abolish freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. And the way they go about, I mean, they do come out and say, well, we want to get rid of democracy. They can't do that. But they, via different agendas, they're trying to achieve that. So, and that's when we get into the different topics, right? So they're claiming that the EU institutions are democratically structured, which they're not. Just to give you one example, the Council is the legislative branch on EU level, but the Council is comprised of the members of the national executive. And what that means is, let's say the German government wanted to pass a law, and the Bundestag, which is the parliamentary representation of the German people, said, no, we don't want this law, and they vote against it. Well, then all the minister has to do is travel to Brussels, discuss it with his colleagues from the other member states, the government, of the other member states, and they pass the law then in the Council, and then it goes back to the member states where it has to be implemented, since it is an EU regulation. So that is undermining of the division of power, and it's also a violation against the principle of every democracy, which is the rule of the people, by the people, for the people, right? So that instance in and of itself, you cannot call the EU institution a democracy, and they simply fail to explain to people what it actually means to, be ruled from Brussels.
Yeah, because what we're actually seeing now is that democracy is being bypassed, and you called out also your fellow colleagues. You said that they're on a payroll here to act in the best interest of its citizen, and it's kind of mind-blowing that they're not doing it. How is it possible that we're supposed to have a democratic institution that is still bypassing democracy, and that we have politicians acting out against our interests?
Well, yeah, once again, I mean, democracy is, like I said, it's rule of the people, for the people, by the people. And it is up to the people to tell the governments what they want, and the government's job is to implement what the people want. What we're seeing now, however, is like a top-down kind of thing. So the governments dictate to the people what they should want. And anyone not agreeing with what the governments want are being stigmatized and labeled as right-wing extremists. They're being accused of wanting to abolish democracy, which is utterly absurd. So the governments really, or the people really once again need to realize what democracy is all about. And in a democracy, the people are the boss and the governments are the employees. They have to do what the people want, not the other way around.
But to elaborate on that, if we take, for example, COVID, in the Netherlands, there were organized protests. They applied and asked if they could get permission to protest, and they were denied that. In what way can people then still use their power in order to exert their will?
Well, I mean, like I said, we need to, once again, get back to the basics of democracy. What is democracy all about? And democracy is all about what the people want. And all of this gaslighting that is going on, which is done by the governments, by the way. And, just take, like, they want to fight hate speech now. They want to fight disinformation, misinformation, even malinformation. This is all done to shut people up. And when you look at the various categories now, so misinformation is an information you spread, but it is based on false assumptions. So you made a mistake by giving out information. Unintentionally, you're putting out a fact which is not really a fact. But no, you don't have any intentions of misleading the people. Disinformation, on the other hand, is deliberately spreading false information. An example for that would be, yeah, the mRNA shots are safe and effective. But who spread that piece of information? It was the government, right? So they were actually spreading the disinformation. They knew it was neither safe nor effective, but yet they spread that information. And then we get, now we have this new thing, it's called malinformation. Now it's getting really interesting. Malinformation is factually accurate information, but is deemed harmful. So if factually based argument, for example, to say there's exactly two sexes, men and women, that is a factually true statement, but nevertheless they want to label you or want to prohibit you from saying that because it is harmful. It is harmful to the desired narrative that the government wants you to believe in. So, and once you are at that point, and we are there, then you can no longer speak of living in a democracy.
We're living then in the totalitarian regime. Yes.
Well, we are on the verge of getting there. And also here, it is vital to differentiate between, let's say, a dictatorship and totalitarianism, because these are two different things. A dictator is only interested in staying in power. He doesn't care what the people really think about him. He just makes sure I will stay in power, and he will, implement measures to ensure that he will stay in power. He might infringe on your right to assemble. He might infringe on your right to free speech in order to stay in power. But like I said, he doesn't really care about what the people think about him. Totalitarianism, a whole different ballgame, because totalitarian states, regimes, they need to control every single aspect of every single citizen's life. And it goes down to what they think, what they believe in. And they will do whatever they can to manipulate the people into thinking or believing in something that is factually not true. And yeah, I mean, George Orwell, 1984, he laid it all out. And 1984, his novel was actually meant to be a warning and not a blueprint.
And now it became a reality almost.
We are there,
yes.
Almost. I know.
I wanted to elaborate on what you said about the will of the people, because in Germany, according to a poll, 76 people of the citizens actually want to have a ban on migration, which is a 3/3 majority. Do you think the government will finally listen to its citizens and impose a ban?
Sadly, I have to say, I don't see anyone moving in that direction. So once again, what is happening right up in front of elections, they always know what to say, right? So the Chancellor, Scholz, he said we need, we need to remigrate people on a large scale. So it's talk. Once again, it's nothing but talk. Then take the Christian Democrats in Germany. They are now in the opposition, and they are now criticizing everything the current government is doing, but they are neglecting to tell the people, oh yeah, we were kind of responsible for that, because they have been in government 16 years, and they were the senior partner in the coalition of the German government. Not only did they not do anything to prevent these things from happening, they initiated them under Chancellor Merkel. So it's just talk, and once again, gaslighting, manipulation going on, and yeah, to get the people to just either shut up or even fall in line with what the government wants.
That's a very dark scenario. If I hear you talk like this, I don't feel there's any more hope left for working.
Oh, there's always hope. There's always hope, and I'm actually optimistic at this point. Not only in Germany. I mean, my party is rising in the polls, despite the fact that they're trying to do whatever they can to stigmatize us, label us as anti-democratic, anti-constitutional. I mean, all of these labels are going on. But you can also see that in the other European member states. The national conservative parties are rising in the polls. And now with the election on June 9th coming up, we will grow in numbers. And they're actually scared of that. And they know fully well they may not be able to just push their agendas as undisturbed anymore as they, were like a few years ago still. So yeah, it's actually, we're living in interesting times, and I'm quite optimistic because despite all of their, like I said, gaslighting, manipulation, you can of course ignore reality, but you cannot ignore the consequences of that ignored reality. And that is hitting home to the people right now. So, my party got founded in 2013, AFD, and everything we have been saying for 11 years now turned out to be true. And people are now seeing it. They're realizing it. We weren't fear-mongering. We weren't coming up with ridiculous stuff to get people to vote for us. We just laid out what is going to happen and what the consequences of these government agendas are. And they're beginning to realize, dang, these people actually told us the truth. And like I said, you can ignore reality, but not the consequences of that ignored reality.
Yeah, because there seems to be a little bit of a discrepancy, because indeed, like you said, the conservative parties are rising everywhere throughout Europe. As well, I'm from the Netherlands. Geert Wilders became the biggest party, but now they actually did force him not to become prime minister because they don't want him to have enough power. And I'm kind of scared that we'll see the same happening in other European countries. Even though people are fed up with the policies we've seen for the past years, they will still try to find a way to sideline the conservative parties. Is it something we should fear?
You know what? Interesting that you should mention that, because what you just described pretty much is actually psychological abuse. The people, not only in the European member states, we're seeing this happening in pretty much every Western democracy, the people are being psychologically abused by their governments. And a technique of psychological abuse is, in fact, gaslighting. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term. Gaslighting occurs when you rob someone of his reality. If you claim, something, you insist something is true when it isn't. An example, if I turn the light off now and you ask me, why did you turn the light off? And I would go like, I didn't turn the light off. You must be crazy. The light's on. I convince you of something that is not true. So this gaslighting mechanism is being applied pretty much in every Western democracy. And the people need to realize and need to come to understand that is psychological abuse, what's happening here. And it has no place in any, kind of a relationship, least of all in a relationship government to the citizens.
One other topic you are very fiercely passionate about is the World Health Organization taking more power. Where do we stand on the fight with the World Health Organization?
Yeah, well, they tried last year to change the treaties of the World Health Organization, and it was actually the United States. They proposed 14 amendments, and luckily, we were able to raise the alarm on that, and we're, telling people, look, what they're doing here has nothing to do with democracy. And there was a public outcry. People took to the streets. They protested against it, which then led to the fact that the United States withdrew 12 of their 14 amendments. The only 2 amendments that got passed, they dealt with a certain amount of time that has to pass until a new regulation will go into effect. They managed to do that. But now they're trying to change the international health regulations, which is in essence trying to accomplish what the 14 amendments were supposed to accomplish, but failed since they were withdrawn. And what we're talking about here, once again, it has nothing to do with democracy or political accountability of the elected. We will be looking at the WHO is supposed to be granted governing powers in case there is a pandemic. So the WHO has the authority to call out a pandemic to then seize the governing powers of the member states. And it's quite interesting. So why would the elected governments, who are pretty much out to always seize more power for themselves, why would they voluntarily give up powers to the WHO? Well, interesting question, very simple answer actually. What they were seeing during this COVID madness, and this was just a test balloon, they were just trying to see how far can we go, how many fundamental rights can we infringe upon without the people, stirring up too loudly or protesting too loudly against it. But they realized, since we are elected, we cannot really infringe on the fundamental rights to an extent we would like to infringe upon them, because we're up for re-election and the people might not re-elect us again. So by granting these powers to the WHO, it is providing the elected representatives, the elected officials, with plausible deniability. Because then the elected representatives, they can say, we would not have done this to you, we would not have imposed a curfew on you, we would not have infringed on your fundamental rights. It's the WHO doing it, and there is nothing we can do. So plausible deniability that the elected representatives, and they can even then speak out against WHO, right? To kind of like portray themselves as one of the people, but it wouldn't change anything. These restrictions would still come, but they would have a clean shirt, and they could always say, it wasn't us. Sorry, it wasn't us. So, but what's the repercussion? What can the people do against the WHO? Nothing, because they didn't elect them.
Because I was going to ask that, you were talking about political accountability, and what they're doing now is exactly everything to make sure they will not have any accountability.
Exactly.
And this is really fearful, because now they can do whatever they want to do and we have zero power. How can we restore that balance of power?
Well, once again, people need to realize and need to understand, what does it actually mean to live in a democracy? In a democracy, the government has to be transparent, not the citizen. In a democracy, you need to be critical of the government, not of the citizen. It is not the government's place to mistrust the citizens, but the citizens have every right to be mistrusting the government. They should question everything they're doing or not doing. Always, like I said, look for an ulterior motive. So they're telling me it's for my own good that I have to get an mRNA shot. What are they really trying to accomplish, right? So look for the ulterior motive. And especially with these mRNA shots, I mean, it was quite clear. It was never about public health. It was never about, breaking any waves. It was always about breaking people. And it was about spilling billions and billions and billions of euros into the pockets of pharmaceutical companies.
I think also a problem is that, for example, in the Netherlands, if you look at the media, there's no good objective media. There's like no good critique on how the government is acting, even though they're infringing so much mistrust, disinformation, billions of euros being wasted, and we don't know where it goes to. So this is definitely something that needs to be fixed in the upcoming 5 years when the new elections are going to take place. You are already on the ballot. What's going to be your mission for your next term?
Well, it's going to be the same mission as I was on in this term. I really want freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. Well, at this point, I have to say we have to restore it, because it's been infringed upon in so many ways. Restore it, and to always be thankful of our fathers and forefathers who have literally spilled their blood and wrestled it from the former elites to ensure that their children could enjoy democratic values, freedom, democracy, and all of that. And I would very much like for my children to be able to grow up and, have their families and their children to live in freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. So that's going to be my objective. That's going to be my goal. And I will be tirelessly fighting for freedom, democracy, and the rule of law.
Thank you very much. This was the last question that I had.
Thank you so much for having me.